Hello, my name is Simnikiwe Mzekandaba.
Hi, I'm Chris Treasure.
Spotify does it. Google Photos does it too. So why not ITWeb TV? Welcome to this wrapped episode of ITWeb TV, where we'll be looking at some of the interviews that spark our interest as well as that of our audience in 2024. In line with predictions, Chris, 2024 kicked off with a lot of buzz around generative AI.
That's true.
We saw the smartphone makers rolling out devices with Gen AI or Gen AI-enabled devices. And there was a lot of heightened interest from some of our local banks. FNB's Dr. Christoph Niewoud actually revealed to us in one of the ITWeb TV interviews. He spoke about how the bank was actually innovating with generative AI. And he also revealed that they were increasingly leveraging generative AI in their products and services. He also discussed FNB's plans to recruit more data analysts from the bank's graduate program in a move aimed at building solutions from the emerging technology. Here's a clip from that.
Let's say I'm asking you, as you are ChatGPT and I'm a user, if I can just ask, how much does a data scientist earn now on average?
Okay, that is a great question, but I have to tell you that it is a very big range. Okay. Because in the bank, we have got a very good progression of typically we would take in graduates at a given pay, and that's typically something, let's say, in the 400,000s would be what somebody with engineering, computer science, or BSc with data science, etc., in this field would be getting as a starting salary. Then they would become, within a 2-year period, they would become a data scientist 1, then a data scientist 2, data scientist 3. So there's 3 levels of data scientists. That is the formal positions. Then there's data science manager, there's data science head, and then we've got the chief data analytics officer roles on top of that. So that sounds like a lot of positions, but I guess to some extent, in this field, people are quite mobile in terms of jobs. So it is very important to have a career progression, because you're not just staying at the same level for a very long time period. So within a 2 to 4 year period, you would expect to get a promotion to a next level. And that's the way that we are retaining staff. You mentioned before, there's a lot of competition for jobs in this. So we make sure, obviously, that the candidates that are better, that are performing, that are working harder, that are committed, that they are getting promoted. And then that means that there's really good job growth in this.
Generate AI definitely some in terms of a disruptive force within the banking industry. We also had a very interesting chat with Johnson Ideso from ABSA, who spoke about their ambition to differentiate themselves as a digital business. So there's very much a process, ongoing process at the bank. They invested in security. They've also invested in digital transformation, and Gen AI is very much a part of that process. Johnson also spoke about the need for training, and he used the word demystifying Gen AI, which I think is an interesting aspect of it. He, once within a contained, controlled environment, they are encouraging their employees to experiment with the technology to see how they can bolster their service levels. It's a very, very interesting aspect of the banking industry these days. And it speaks to ABSA's desire to retain and sustain their position as a Pan-African bank on the global stage. Here's more from that interview.
How do you see super apps? So we've got WeChat in China, and one of my colleagues was recently out in China and told me how pervasive it is to anything that you want to do. And obviously China is a very different political system, but how do you see those kind of operating or kind of progressing in the African environment?
Yeah, that's something we've also spent a lot of time thinking about. I would also add M-Pesa as a more local example, which is almost like become a super app. To me, it's the networked economy and it's the ecosystem that sits underneath it. That's how I think about it. Now, you're quite right in saying China is a particular context. Kenya is also a particular context. There will be our own realities. I do think they'll become more and more pervasive, simplistically because of the seamless ease from a customer point of view. I do think banks, retailers, really any organization that is B2C will have to be very deliberate about how they play a part in these ecosystems. Because if you do it well, there's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
The thing about these ecosystems is the disproportionate advantage you get as you scale. Very low cost, close to zero cost. And the competitive tension will be, how do you partner with super apps, but keep your own unique value? And I think, frankly, most organizations are still trying to work that out. But I do think as a theme, it's one of these things we will see more and more simplistically, because adoption, customer experience is going to drive that quite ferociously.
Okay.
In 2024, I think a lot of people would agree it's been very difficult to keep the lights on. So,
Yes, it has been, but not entirely, Chris, because we've not had load shedding for more than 250 days.
wow.
This obviously in line with what the Eskom chairperson Mteto Nyati told us when he came onto ITWeb TV as well. He spoke about how the power utility was actually working to keep the lights on and told us about expectations around when they want to start making profits. He also said SA is actually unlikely to experience load shedding in 2025, proof that it might just not be a political ploy like some of my colleagues thought. Here's a short snippet from Mteto Nyati's interview.
And also, maybe, I know Eskom has got a lot of debt.
Yeah.
How would the unbundling issue impact this debt?
Would you like to help us with some of this debt?
I think I'm helping somehow. I'm paying my bills.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So listen, you are right. We're probably sitting at about 400 billion rand of debt, and that's a huge amount of debt, right? But at the beginning of last year, the Parliament, they passed a bill called the Eskom Debt Relief Bill, which has enabled us to get the support from National Treasury. And that amount of money, it was not paid into Eskom in one go. It's paid over a 3-year period, right? And over that 3 years, it's being used to pay, some of it pay interest and some of it paying the capital.
Okay.
So our expectation is that at the end of the 3 years, we'll probably be sitting at about 200 billion rand of debt, which is a much better place compared to where we are, right? And the good thing is that at that time, Eskom is going to be profitable. Why? How are we going to get Eskom to be profitable? Look at this year. Okay, last year we spent 30 billion rand on diesel. And the amount of, if you look at the profitability, I cannot talk about the numbers yet, they're not yet released.
Okay.
But if you now reduce your usage of that diesel, all of that money goes to the bottom line, right? So that's very important. That's one thing. The next thing where you are going to be, because we're not going to be doing load shedding, our revenue is going to go up. Already the last 51 days, our revenue significantly up compared to the previous period last year because there was no load shedding. So your revenue is up. The third element that's going to be driving us to get to profitability is the interest charge. Because now our debt is small, the annual interest charge that we're paying is going to be lower. Our interest probably goes to about 30 billion rand, So just by reducing it maybe by a third, that goes a long way, right? So a combination of those three things, the top line, the revenue is going to be going up, the amount of money that we're spending on diesel significantly lower, and our tax charge has lower. A combination of those is going to be taking us to profitability. You know, so we are going to have an entity that is able to rely on itself, not relying on government. So how we have allocated this debt across these three entities, a significant part of it, 80 plus, goes to generation, because that's where most of the investment had gone, building of plants. Then another amount goes to, I think, about 10 or so, goes to maybe 12 or 13, goes to the transmission company. Then the rest of the debt goes to distribution. So that's how we have allocated the debt across the three entities. So as we separate them, as we allow them to go and be independent, each one will go with their own debt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
South African organizations could still fall prey to cybersecurity incidents.
Yes.
Even the information regulator has spoken about how the problems actually just becoming worse. On Eskom as well, the CISO, Sithembile Songo, was also here, and she spoke about how, or what they do to try and, fend off all these cyber attacks. She revealed that they actually fend off up to 1 billion attempted cyber attacks per month, or cyber incidents per month. Can you imagine 1 billion?
Goodness gracious, well.
Because a lot of people are trying to attack her, or a lot of cyber attackers are trying to get into Eskom's system. But she also actually said that if not blocked, those cyber incidents could have resulted in cyber attacks.
Just to also follow up on what you were saying about, the evolution of cyber threats, and we're seeing more of that, particularly here in South Africa as well. We'll see lots of reports about data breaches. What would you say are some of the, security challenges that you foresee for South African organizations, given, what we're experiencing at the moment or what we're witnessing at the moment?
Given what we're experiencing at the moment, we need to make sure that we improve our cybersecurity capabilities when it comes to managing that purchase. I mean, we've seen what happened to Microsoft, we've seen what happened to CrowdStrike. So that goes without saying that we really need to improve our capabilities when it comes to looking after our third parties. I mentioned earlier on that these cyber criminals are also clever. They checked what's happening. Even with regards to what happened to CrowdStrike, they realized that, by hacking just one organization, I can actually get so much return on investment by leveraging on just one supplier that will help me to gain access to so many companies. So that is why it's important to make sure that we have proper processes in place to manage our third parties, not just processes, also the technology that can help you in terms of in case your processes fail you. So if you look at what happened in terms of the recent incident regarding CrowdStrike, I read somewhere that the damage or the impact is actually more than $10 billion across the world. So that's a lot of money, actually. And we've seen even some of the airports, failing to provide the boarding pass to people. I saw manual boarding passes. That's their PCP, by the way, which is good. But it caused delays, unnecessary delays, and those companies lost a lot of money. And that was completely unforeseen. I don't think anyone has ever expected this. It's one of the biggest outages in the IT incident history. And it caused a very huge impact.
Oh, yes, definitely. It's a very active market from both a defense and attack point of view. And that is something that we spoke to Gareth Riedlinghuis from Trend Micro about. He was very forthright about the role that AI or Gen AI can play. It's a double-edged sword. It can be used for both attack and defense. And the fact of the matter is that syndicates are becoming very sophisticated and very well organized, to the extent that we now have cybercrime as a service, which is pretty much becoming a reality for South African businesses and businesses across the world, I would say. AI is definitely going to be a hot topic into the next year as well, from a cybersecurity point of view. Here's some more from that interview. The other thing that Trend Micro is known for is also its research, and I believe that the research you have collaborated with law enforcement agencies, Interpol being one of them, using the research to help them in their efforts to follow up on and stand power in cybercrime. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, it's no secret that cybersecurity is number 5 of the global list of, misfortune. So number 1 is energy crisis. Number 2, I think, is cost of living. Number 3 is rising inflation. Number 4 is shortage of food. And number 5 is cybersecurity and infrastructure damage that's caused from it. So, it's something that we're definitely relevant in terms of, where it's going. So, yes, and number 5 being cybersecurity, we work very, very closely with law enforcement, globally, FBI, more locally with Interpol. So we've actually helped come and bring down quite a few syndicates, specifically in Nigeria, which is one that I can mention because we work very closely with Interpol. So there's Operation Killer Bee, that was Nigerian. What they were pretty much doing there is intercepting invoices. And, one organization would send an invoice to another organization. They would intercept the invoice and do something as small as changing the banking details on that and sending it through, phoning the organization saying, we've sent you the invoice. If you pay it within 3 days, we'll give you an extra 5%. Now, when you're talking of invoices of over $20 million, etc., 5% used, what is the user going to do? They're going to pay it as quick as possible.
And Chris, our wrap would not be complete without discussing Elon Musk's satellite-based internet service, Starlink. We know that it's currently available in some Southern African nations, but the SA is still eagerly awaiting, with no clarity in terms of what's happening there. In one of our most watched interviews on ITWeb TV, we had the chairperson of ICASA coming on, and he revealed to us that the Musk team hasn't actually submitted or hasn't yet submitted a formal application for Starlink to be available in South Africa. During that interview, he also told us about, overhauling the policy legislative framework, as well as the issue around the proliferation of unregistered SIMs.
You do not necessarily trying to chase them away, because at the end of the day, it's an investment into the country. So, but it's looking at how do we come up with a collaborative effort that will work for everyone or all parties involved.
Yeah, like as I said, I think it's never the intention of any regulator that I know that will say no to any innovation. But as I said, innovation, it's encouraged, but it needs to be implemented in a manner that it's prescribed in those countries. So in South Africa, we do have rules, and I think it will be sad if you just allow anyone just to come in and do things the way they like. It's a fair play. Yeah, so yeah. But from the authority, as I said, I'm still not having a full authority to can pronounce. Yeah, because as I said, I'm only new, but it's a topic that it's there. And I'm giving my personal view, but at the same time, I'm still responsible as a chair just to guide that anyone who still has an appetite to come to any country, just be mindful that you can't just come to my house and do things without engaging me properly, because ultimately I've built this house. And if you're going to help me to reconstruct, let's talk about the rules and responsibilities. Then, when you can put together a framework of that nature, you'll see that many things will be done in a proper way.
So would it be a matter of, I've built this house, if you want to rent a room, there's a room for you available for you to rent?
But people pay, I've never heard of, even my uncle, when I used to be in Soweto, next door they'll tell you, you pay rent, you pay the back room. So I think, and it's all about not just paying, but it's appreciating that somebody took time to put something. And me as a regulator, as I said, the primary element or commodity that I've given you is spectrum, which is key. You can imagine now, if I give you spectrum, you don't use it efficiently, effectively, it's a waste. And this thing is a natural resource. So if you come to me and say, with the spectrum that I've been assigned, I'm using it to provide services for other people, I'm growing in the economy, I'm creating jobs for ICASA, that's a very good story to tell. But if some people are misusing what I've given you, I've assigned you, yeah, we need to sit down on the table and agree and say, let's correct this.
In a more recent interview, though, Chris, he actually told us that ICASA will actually make pronouncements in terms of their licensing framework for satellite-based internet services in 2025. So what happens with that and Starlink, we'll only know next year.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Policy, regulation, and Starlink. I guess we must wait and see.
We'll definitely have to do that, Chris. Thank you for watching this ITWeb TV Wrapped. For more on these videos, please subscribe.